I've been dead for 43 years, and tonight I'm finally going to tell you why the voice on the other end of the encrypted call is gravelly, worn down by decades of cigarettes and secrets. He calls himself Thomas Walsh, though I know that's not his real name. Nobody uses their real name when they're confessing to war crimes on my podcast. You sure about this? I ask, adjusting the recording levels in my home studio. Outside my Portland apartment, rain hammers the windows like bullets. Once this goes live, there's no taking it back. I'm 74 years old, Walsh says. I've got maybe 6 months left before the cancer takes me. If I don't tell this story now, it dies with me. I've been running Buried Truths for 3 years, focusing on untold stories from America's forgotten conflicts. Vietnam mostly, but also Cambodia, Laos, the dirty little wars that never made it into history books. This call came through my secure tip line 2 weeks ago. An old man claiming to have information about a detention facility that officially never existed. Tell me about Camp Desolation. I say, the silence stretches so long I think he's home. Up? Then, that wasn't its real name. We just called it that because of what it did to people. The official designation was Processing Station Delta 7. Processing what? Kids, mostly. Vietnamese teenagers we captured during sweep operations. Supposed to be holding them for intelligence gathering and repatriation. Walsh's laugh is bitter. But that's not what happened. I lean forward, checking the recording indicator. Green light, good levels. What did happen? Murder. Systematic, deliberate murder. And I was part of it. The next 2 hours are the most disturbing I've ever spent. Behind the microphone, Walsh describes a remote facility in the Mekong Delta, staffed by American military personnel and CIA operatives. Their mission: extract intelligence from captured Vietnamese civilians, mostly teenagers suspected of Viet Cong sympathies. The thing you have to understand, Walsh says, his voice steady despite the horror of his words, is that we weren't supposed to be there. Officially, American forces didn't operate detention facilities for civilians. Everything we did was off the books, black budget, need to know only. How many prisoners were there? Started with maybe 30 when I arrived in February 71. By the time I left in October, we'd processed over 200. Processed how? Another long pause. Interrogation. Sleep deprivation. Stress positions. Waterboarding. Electric shock. We had a doctor on staff, Dr. Morrison, who experimented with drugs, sensory deprivation, psychological breaking techniques. My stomach churns. These were children. 14 to 17 mostly. Some younger. Walsh's voice cracks. We told ourselves they were enemy combatants, that we were saving American lives. But the truth is, most of them were just kids caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. What happened to them? Most didn't survive the interrogation. Those who did ... double quotes, he trails off. Those who did what? They never left the camp. Orders were clear: no witnesses, no survivors. Everything that happened at Delta 7 stayed at Delta 7. I sit back in my chair, processing what he's telling me. Mass murder of civilians, including children. Torture, medical experimentation. If Walsh is telling the truth, this could be one of the biggest war crime stories to come out of Vietnam. How many people knew about this? My unit was 12 men, plus the medical staff, intelligence officers, camp commander. Maybe 20 people total. Are any of them still alive? The question hangs in the air for a long moment. Just me. Everyone else is dead. Everyone? In 50 years? Not 50 years, Walsh says quietly. 18 months. They all died within 18 months of the camp shutting down. Ice runs down my spine. Died how? Car accidents. Hunting mishaps. Heart attacks, suicides. One guy fell off a bridge. Another overdosed. Real creative deaths, you know. Nothing that looked suspicious on its own. But taken together, it's pretty clear someone wanted to make sure the Delta 7 story never got out. I checked my notes, mind racing. If Walsh is right, this isn't just a war crime story. It's an active cover-up that's lasted half a century. Why are you still alive? Because I was smart enough to disappear. Walsh's voice hardens. Thomas Walsh died in a car accident in Tucson, Arizona, in November 1971. The man you're talking to has been someone else ever since. Who were you before? That doesn't matter. What matters is what we did to those kids. For the next hour, Walsh provides details that make me want to vomit. Specific torture techniques, names of victims, descriptions of medical experiments that sound like something out of Nazi Germany. He's clearly been carrying this for decades, and the words pour out of him like poison from a wound. There was this one kid, he says, voice breaking. Couldn't have been more than 15. Thin as a rail, scared out of his mind. He kept asking for his mother in broken English. Where Mama? Where Mama? Over and over. What happened to him? Dr. Morrison wanted to test a new drug cocktail, something that was supposed to break down psychological resistance. He injected the kid with God knows what, and we watched him convulse for 6 hours before he died. I have to stop recording for a moment to compose myself. When I restart, Walsh is crying. I held his hand while he died, he whispers. This little kid, and I held his hand because nobody should die alone like that. But I didn't stop it. I could have stopped it, and I didn't. Why not? Because I was 20 years old and scared. Because they told us it was necessary. Because I was a coward. The self-loathing in his voice is palpable. But mostly because I didn't think of them as human. That's what they trained us to do, see the enemy as less than human. Makes it easier to kill them. As the interview continues, Walsh provides documentation. Unit rosters, operational reports, even photographs taken at the camp. He's been sitting on a treasure trove of evidence for 5 decades, waiting for the right moment to come forward. Why now? I ask. Because they're trying to do it again. The statement hits like a physical blow. What do you mean? Immigration detention centers, kids in cages, family separation. Same playbook, different war. Walsh's voice is steel now. I spent 50 years telling myself that what we did was an aberration, a product of that specific time and place. But it's not. It's what we do. It's who we are. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. Dr. Morrison didn't disappear after Vietnam. He went to work for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The techniques we developed at Delta 7, the psychological breaking methods, the deliberate dehumanization, it's all been institutionalized. I'm struggling to keep up. You're saying the same people involved in war crimes in Vietnam are now working in immigration enforcement? I'm saying the same methods are being used. Whether it's the same people or just people trained by them doesn't matter. The result is the same kids being systematically brutalized by their government. Walsh provides names, dates, connections between Vietnam-era personnel and current immigration officials. If he's right, this story is bigger than historical war crimes. It's about ongoing human rights violations. How do I verify this? I ask. Start with the personnel files. Cross-reference Vietnam service records with current DHS employment. Look for patterns. Follow the money. A lot of the private prison companies that run detention centers have ties to defense. Contractors who worked black operations in Southeast Asia. He's thought this through, clearly. This isn't the rambling confession of a dying man. It's a carefully planned exposure of systemic abuse. What about the evidence from Delta 7? I'll send you everything. Photos, documents, personal testimonies are recorded from other guards before they died. But be careful, the people who killed my unit are still out there, and they've had 50 years to perfect their methods. The call ends shortly after midnight. I sit in my studio, staring at the recording equipment, trying to process what I've just heard. If Walsh is telling the truth, I'm sitting on the biggest story of my career. If he's lying, I'm about to destroy my credibility, chasing shadows. Over the next week, evidence arrives in dribs and drabs. Photographs that make me sick to my stomach. Documents with official letterheads and classified stamps. Personnel records that support Walsh's claims about connections between Vietnam-era operatives and current immigration officials. I reach out to my sources at the Pentagon, the CIA, Immigration, and Customs Enforcement. Most refuse to comment, but a few off-the-record conversations confirm at least part of Walsh's story. There was definitely something happening at the coordinates he provided. Personnel with the right names and backgrounds did serve in that region during the relevant time period, but nobody will go on record. Nobody will confirm the specific allegations. And several sources warn me off the story entirely. Some sleeping dogs should stay asleep, one former CIA analyst tells me, especially the ones with sharp teeth. I spend another week fact-checking, cross-referencing, building a bulletproof case. The story is too important to get wrong, too dangerous to get wrong. Finally, I'm ready to publish. The episode goes live on a Tuesday morning. Camp Desolation, America's secret murder factory. Within hours, it's trending on social media. Download numbers explode. News outlets start picking up the story. But something's wrong. I try calling Walsh to get his reaction to the response, but the number's disconnected. I reach out through the encrypted channels we used before. Nothing. It's like he's vanished. On Thursday, I get a call from a detective in Spokane, Washington. Mr. Patterson? This is Detective Sarah Kim with Spokane PD. I understand you recently interviewed a man named Thomas Walsh. My blood turns cold. What about him? Mr. Walsh was found dead in his apartment this morning. Apparent suicide. But we found your contact information in his phone, and given the timing with your podcast, ... I sink into my chair. What kind of suicide? Gunshot to the head. He left a note confessing to war crimes and expressing remorse for his actions. Pretty standard stuff for someone dealing with PTSD and terminal illness. Detective, I think you need to investigate this more thoroughly. Mr. Walsh was preparing to release additional evidence about Mr. Patterson. Detective Kim interrupts. I've been instructed to tell you that this case is closed. Mr. Walsh took his own life due to guilt and terminal cancer. End of story. Instructed by who? The line goes quiet for a moment. Have a good day, Mr. Patterson. She hangs up, leaving me staring at my phone. Walsh is dead, less than 72 hours after our story went public. The timing is too convenient to be coincidental. I spend the next few days in a paranoid haze, checking locks, varying my routines, wondering if I'm next. The story continues to gain traction despite Walsh's death, maybe because of it. Other veterans start reaching out with their own stories about black operations and cover-ups. Human rights organizations demand investigations. Congressional offices issue statements calling for transparency, but nothing happens. No investigations are launched. No officials are charged. The story burns bright for a week, then fades into the background noise of outrage and scandal that defines modern media. A month later, I'm contacted by another voice from the past. This one claims to have worked with Walsh at Delta 7, says he has additional evidence that will blow the story wide open. We arrange to meet at a coffee shop in Seattle. The man who shows up is in his 70s, walking with a cane, wearing the kind of windbreaker that screams veteran. He introduces himself as Robert Sterling, though like Walsh, I doubt it's his real name. Tom was my friend, he says without preamble. We served together, suffered together, kept each other's secrets for 50 years. I'm sorry for your loss. Sterling waves off my sympathy. He knew the risks. We both did. But the story had to be told. Do you have additional evidence? Instead of answering, Sterling slides a manila envelope across the table. Everything Tom couldn't give you. The real documentation, the complete personnel files, the connections to current operations. I peeked inside photographs, official documents. What looks like a complete operational manual for the detention facility. It's a gold mine. Why didn't Walsh give me this before? Because he wanted to see if they'd let the first story stand. If you could publish part of the truth and live to tell about it. Sterling's smile is grim. Turns out the answer is no. They killed him. Of course they killed him. Same way they killed the rest of us. Double quotes. Sterling leans forward. I'm the last one left, Mr. Patterson. The last witness to what really happened at Delta 7. And after tonight, I'll be dead too. Then why are you doing this? Because some truths are worth dying for. And because those kids deserve to have their stories told, even if it's 50 years too late. Sterling stands to leave and pauses. One more thing. The connection between Delta 7 and current immigration operations? It's worse than Tom told. They're not just using the same techniques, they're running the same program. Different country, different victims, same systematic brutalization of children. How can you prove that? It's all in the envelope. Follow the money, follow the personnel, follow the contracts. You'll see. He adjusts his windbreaker and heads for the door. Just remember they've killed 11 of us so far. They won't hesitate to make it 12. I sit in the coffee shop for an hour after Sterling leaves, staring at the envelope and wondering what to do. Publish the additional evidence and risk my life? Stay quiet and let the cover-up continue? In the end, the choice is easy. Those kids Walsh described, the 15-year-old who died asking for his mother, they deserve better than silence. The second episode publishes on Friday evening. Camp Desolation. The cover-up continues. This time, I include everything complete documentation, the personnel connections, the evidence linking Vietnam-era torture techniques to current immigration detention practices. The response is explosive. Congressional hearings are demanded. International human rights organizations call for investigations. The story dominates news cycles for days. On Monday morning, I find Sterling's obituary in the Seattle Times. Heart attack, they say. Sudden and unexpected, but not uncommon for a man his age with a history of cardiac problems. I'm sitting in my studio, reading about Sterling's death, when my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. You're next. I stare at the message. Hands shaking. They're not even trying to be subtle anymore. Walsh dead, Sterling dead, and now they're coming for me, but I'm not going quietly. I've already uploaded everything to multiple cloud servers, sent copies to journalists around the world, arranged for automatic publication if something happens to me. They can kill me, but they can't kill the story. My phone buzzes again. Another text. Check your email. I open my laptop with trembling fingers. There's a new message in my inbox, no sender name, just a subject line. The truth about Thomas Walsh. The email contains a single attachment, a scan of an official document. It's a death certificate dated November 15th, 1971. Name, Thomas Eugene Walsh. Cause of death, motor vehicle accident. Below the certificate is a brief note. Thomas Walsh died 53 years ago. The man you interviewed was Robert Sterling, the last surviving member of the Delta 7 unit. He used Walsh's identity to draw attention away from himself while he prepared to expose the truth. He knew we'd find him eventually, so he decided to control the narrative. Congratulations, you've been played by a dead man who's been living. On borrowed time since 1971. I stare at the screen, pieces falling into place. Sterling, or whatever his real name was, had been planning this for years, using his dead friend's identity as cover while he gathered evidence and waited for the right journalist to tell his story. He knew he was going to die, so he made his death count for something. The last text arrives as I'm processing this revelation. The camp was real. The murders were real. Everything he told you was true. But now everyone who could testify is dead, and all you have is the word of a man who lied about his own identity. Good luck proving any of it. I sit back in my chair, understanding flooding through me. They let me publish the story because they knew it would never stick. No living witnesses, no corroborating testimony, just documents that could be dismissed as forgeries and the claims of a man who lied about who he was, the perfect cover-up. Let the truth come out in a way that ensures nobody will believe it. Asterisk.